So we're gonna do like a preliminary outline to
like a teaser almost?
Our day-to-day work, like what I've been trying to kind of work into my workout, and it's worked quite well. And like I said, like I've said before, I think it's a combination of just consistency with the workouts, but also we will go further into it with our diet. What are the things that are like, there's all these little tiny things that have to happen.
Like it's all these layers.
There's so many
it's
layers to it.
It's gonna take a while to unpack them.
I know, and so that's the thing. It's like getting into shape and getting the muscles that you want and the leanness that you want is not just working out. You know, it's a lot of other things. So it's definitely diet, it's definitely genetics, it's definitely consistency, but the type of workout is, I think it is something to be discussed. So for me, I've kind of mapped it out. So let's say now I'm like 3 years into this journey almost, right? Has it been 3 years now?
Feels like it.
So it's maybe 2.5. But
how many weeks are you into on your blue dots?
It says 100, almost 140 weeks.
So that's how long it's been.
Yeah, so it's been consistent 140 weeks into
so
this journey.
Almost at 3 years.
Yeah.
Right?
So every day, no matter what. There may be days when I of course you're gonna be sick sometimes, but I still do a stretch, or I still do, there's something where I still move. So, or sometimes you're hurt, then you can't, you know, so you've got to kind of give yourself grace.
What would you, speaking of that, what would you, because you're super disciplined, you've got that crazy long streak, but that's not for everybody. So no. What would you say for people who, like, achieving a streak like that is too much right now, and you don't want to alienate them from trying to do what we're doing? So
right.
What would you say to them?
So first, I guess, when we have more time and when this place isn't all crazy, I think the habit jar is something that's really important that I want to discuss. So even for the days when you're just like, this ain't for me, I can't do this.
It's actually ironic. This place is like a metaphor for our health journey.
Why?
Well, because it's under construction, it's under improvement.
Yeah, that's totally true. That's totally true. So the habit jar is really critical in keeping the consistency. But Matt's totally right. There's going to be days when you're just like, screw this, it's not for me. I'm not like Irene, she's kind of nuts, which I am. Like I once I decide I'm going to do something, I kind of just keep doing it. It's kind of like I like a rat on a cage.
It works for you.
It works for me. But my suggestion is,
I'm just going to say this what you've been doing, I think, is flexible enough that it can work for people who aren't like that.
Right. So you should be able to earn your blue dots, or you know, your consistency where you want to be on this long streak. So those days, it's like, you know what? Park your car a little bit further. You know what I mean? So then you've maybe walked for 5 minutes. I mean, I think those are things one can do. And if you really can't move that day where you're like, I'm deathly sick, fine, do a meditation. That for me is some kind of working a muscle. So that's considered a blue dot, like I would say. You know, it's not moving, but you're moving your muscles in your brain. And I think that's really key. But I think you can always stretch.
So like have an elastic version of your blue dot.
Correct.
So that as long as you put in even that modest effort, you're still on track.
Yes, and I think then that's how you keep going. Because if you feel like, oh my God, you put these ridiculous, and we tell our kids this, like if you put these ridiculous goals on yourself, not only is it daunting, it's not achievable. And I think that's the key. So I'm gonna say when I first started this journey, I was honestly on a 15-minute bike ride.
That's interesting too, that we're gonna slip into a long piece.
Yeah,
but there's so much to talk, but
it's a lot.
Remember how we were talking about, with Pete, and you mentioned focus on process?
Yes.
I think it's similar here.
That's the process, right?
Right, so the wisdom there that we're still figuring out, which is pretty profound, is that, yes, you have these goals, right? Yeah. But don't focus solely, don't define everything you're doing on those goals, because then, you know, it could feel catastrophic if you miss one day or even if you don't achieve that goal.
Right, and then you beat yourself up.
So focus on process.
I can't do this. Yes, exactly.
Daily or process. Make sure you have a good process and focus on that.
The process is so important. So give yourself grace, right? So I started with just honestly 15, and I've told this story many times, where we had a Peloton for the longest time. Like we were the earliest adopters. I think we got the Peloton when it first came out. We have the oldest model. Now everyone has these really cool looking ones. Ours looks like, it still looks like it, right? But it's just not as cool looking. But it still works and it's awesome. So that thing sat in the garage for a good, how long? Like 2 years maybe?
An embarrassingly long amount of time.
Dust, stuff was on it, you couldn't even see it, like people would throw stuff on it. But then finally one day, a lot of things happened, and I decided like I need to make a change. So what's brilliant about Peloton is they have workouts that are 5 minutes long, 15 minutes long. So I decided let's just try a 15-minute bike ride. Very easy, coasting through. And so 15 minutes a day. Then it just started kind of moving towards other things. But it really started with 15 minutes a day and being truly disciplined about it. And it could have been anything, 15 minutes of a stretch, 15 minutes of anything. So now fast forward to all the other stuff that we have added on to, into the workout to kind of get towards a more healthier self. But, and it's tinkering every day, right, Matt? Like, but the key is consistency. So I would say my workouts, in a summary, is I bike and I run every other day. So I always do some form of a cardio. Lengthwise, they are pretty long these days because that's just what I'm into.
Well, you've worked your way up to it.
Yes, so I will run, when I'm doing and what we've also learned is I practice the zone 2 training. So I could go into that, which is keeping to a easier pace. And I do that with my biking and my running.
So for people who are new to it, how would you just introduce them to zone 2?
So it's keeping, because then it gets really complicated. Like we should go into it's like
just the headline is that
it's keeping your heart rate at a particular
zones.
So it makes your workout quite pleasurable because it's
we have a lot to cover.
I know. So I do the zone 2 trainings for most for the week. I would say 4 times a week, and then I punctuate those 3 other days with really high intensity workouts. So that's one thing I definitely do. But then what I find that's really important is always working on your core. Core is critical. So I do that every day, no matter what. And then depending on which days, again, I do every other day because I personally, and everyone's different. Everyone's body's different. So I think you have to look within yourself and kind of understand how your body is. I develop really big, huge muscles if I'm not careful. So I only do my strength trainings on certain parts of the body every other day. And I do a lot of stretching right after. And that's what I learned from Bird. So on the days when I'm not doing my arms, I will be doing a bar exercise. But I always, or a yoga kind of flow after my cardio. And I find that really great in terms of just strengthening, because strengthening is really important when you get older too. And that also keeps you from getting injured. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. And it's kind of seems confusing because it took me a long time to kind of figure out what the summary is. But it's basically cardio and a strength workout of some sort and a lot of stretching. That happens every day. Again, how far you run, how long you run, how much of the strength training you do. I think it just starts small, and maybe it adds up to half an hour, 15 minutes of cardio and 15 minutes of core plus some kind of strength workout. That's 30 minutes a day. And then as you get stronger and stronger, you'll see that you're going to start tagging it on and we'll start talking about that in detail of the zone 2 workout and how important that is. So that's a real quick nutshell, and then what I think we'll start doing is we're going to go into detail about that particular subject. What do you think, Matt? Would that be the best way to do it?
Yep.
Is that a good summary, or is that confusing still?
I think it's good. I think we'll do probably more in-depth summary, I guess.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll have later episodes dealing with break that down.
Yes, breaking it down.
Right?
But I think the takeaway is consistency. It doesn't matter what it is. Just move. 5 minutes a day. That's great. Park your car. Like that. I think even if you do that.
And then reiterate your 2 core or the core
So always a
components.
cardio, always a core. Those 2 things have to happen. I find the core is so important. And that's what I never learned when I was doing, sports.
No.
I would have been a far better tennis player, I think. Or, you know what I mean?
I totally
We would have
agree.
been way better in high school and college if we had learned this one thing, which is your core is the powerhouse to anything you do. So when you are running or when you're biking without a strong core, I don't think you could have the endurance that you would really
Any sport you and I got involved with at our younger age, we would have benefited greatly.
Yeah, stretching is a huge thing, and strengthening.
Flexibility.
So I do strengthening. So core strengthening, stretching happens every day, plus a cardio. And it gets mixed up along the way. So we could kind of map it out and go into detail. And, you know, like some people may want to say, hey, one of my cardio days could be swim, you know, so, but I do bike and run. That's what I do. I love running and I could run forever.
And
so
you're pretty consistent using a heart rate monitor. I
do that every day. I mean, I even took the heart rate monitor to Mexico. I travel with it. I love, and Matt's right. Like if you're traveling, you can just use your watch, but I find I like how accurate. It's better because it's really
it's
close.
So light to carry.
Yeah, so I carry it, and then using the heart rate monitor is a critical.
That's another episode reviewing our equipment.
The equipment's really important, right? And I think it's really important if you start thinking about the zone training. The zone training is critical in terms of gaining strength, and for me, learning how to run way longer than I could have in the past without injuring myself. So that's something we've done.
And for us, what was a totally counterintuitive way?
Totally counterintuitive, and it still boggles my mind sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I have a hard time staying in
And it applies
zone 2.
to life beyond exercise,
Yes.
which is so weird.
Yes. So let's talk about that, but it's a lot of things, right? And I think those are all things where, are you an exerciser or an athlete? And I think if you would like to be an athlete, you kind of have to be doing these things, or else you could just be an exerciser, which I think it doesn't last, and it also you will get injured. So,
but we need to elaborate on that.
Yes. So that's what's going on. So that's in an outline form, and then because everyone keeps asking, so I'm like, okay, let's do an outline.
And this is, you know what, the way this is our rough take on it. So we'll improve on this.
Yes, but I think it's like, you know, with anything I do, I always go back, like you have to have a thesis, right? So the thesis is, I'm going to give you an outline of what we do. But the main thing to take away, I think personally, is consistency. If you could just be consistent with this particular, like with exercising your mind or your body, I think that's how you're going to achieve, you know, if you want to achieve a particular, you know, goal in your health, right? Would you say? And I'm not going to say it's like, you know, it's just getting healthy. It doesn't matter I think it's like once you get healthier, of course you're going to get slimmer and leaner. But I think if you just start with just, I want to just move for 15 minutes. But you have to move every day.
I think it's that freedom that we found in this idea of focusing on the process.
The process.
De-emphasizing the outcome. Of course you're mindful of the outcome. Of course it's the arms. Of course it's whatever.
Right. But that's your goal, and it's important to have that goal.
That's right. But so once you have to establish that goal.
Of course.
But what we've learned is that yes, you have those goals, but then day to day, you're focused much more on the process, and that's what's going to get you to the goal.
That's true.
And we found that if you focus just on the goal, it's a much more fragile thing that's prone to giving up because.
And the process, the key to the process working is the consistency. And I find having a system in place to regulate the consistency is critical. I personally do believe that. You have to have a system. There's no system, it goes haywire. Because without the accountability of something where it's going to keep you on task, how is that going to ever work? It doesn't. And if you have kids, you know that doesn't work, right? So consistency is the key. And honestly, it doesn't matter what type of movement. That's the key. So we'll talk about it some more, but I hope that didn't confuse you even more. And I hope it kind of helps. Let us stew for a while too, because I thought it was very confusing when I first started thinking about this. It was just way too much. So let's just think about.
And if you guys give us your feedback, then we can even refine this and replace it with a more polished version. So.
That's right. Okay. So we'll review. We'll talk about it more, of course, but I think that's enough for today, right?
It's a start.
Yes. All right.
That's our blue dot.
Okay. Bye, guys.